boxing,
beats and rhymes.
No one can do it better.
What did I say? What did I say, Frank? That's it. Frank won what ZANIBEK, ARUM, Denzel Bentley 2 in Britain. That's where we need to get ARUM. Get him in Britain, Wembley Arena, fill up that blood cleat and let him know we're bringing the noise. Yeah? Denzel can work on his inside game, which is where I think the windows of opportunity are against ZANIBEK.
To the winner by majority decision from London, England, and no.
You never know, Denzel, me old son. You never know.
boxing,
Beats and rhymes.
No one can do it better.
Ben Shalom talking about still has hopes for Joshua BUASTSI, Anthony Yarde. Yeah, at this stage though, it's got to be for a world title, right? They've ran down the clock on this just being a domestic dust-up between two prospects. They're not prospects no more. Yeah? Joshua BUASTSI's never fought for a world title, for a full world title yet. Yarde has had 2 world title attempts and 2 failed efforts. The bottom line is, Callum Smith has put himself in position to fight for that interim scrap that BUASTSI possesses. This is where Yarde should be. But bad management, it's got to be said, has kept Yarde inactive and kept him out of this fight here. Kept him out of Riyadh season. Now you hear Yarde talking about, oh, I ain't got no beef with Frank. I work with Frank, Eddie, Ben Shalom and everybody. I would hope so too. The focus now is BUASTSI and Callum Smith. Perfectly good fight. Callum Smith is a former super middleweight champion. The only real bad performance of his career was the Beterbiev fight. But who's to say that BUASTSI could perform any better against Beterbiev than what Callum did? BUASTSI and Yarde is no longer the fight it was. Because of missed opportunities, it's no longer the fight it was for perhaps a British title or a Commonwealth or European title. It's no longer that fight. They're too old for that now. For the prospect fights. It's got to be a world championship fight. Both of them should be looking for world titles now. If BUASTSI beats Callum Smith, he's going to be looking at Anthony Yarde. What's Yarde got for him after you beat Callum Smith? If Callum Smith beats BUASTSI, is that who Yarde wants to fight, or does he want to fight Callum Smith? Callum Smith, 34 years of age. Joshua BUASTSI, 31 years of age. Anthony Yarde, 33 years of age. Yarde versus BUASTSI isn't like Anthony Joshua versus Tyson Fury, where if it's not for a world title, let's say Fury crashes against Usyk, and then he fights AJ for no belt, it would still be a stadium fight. Yarde and BUASTSI is not that. The best chance for that fight to happen is where somebody can take away the I'm the A-side argument that's going on between the two. And that's Turkey over there in Riyadh. Now Callum Smith is fighting BUASTSI for that interim title. Any talk between Yarde and BUASTSI has to be for a world title or...
Oh, forget about it. Oh, forget about it.
boxing,
Beats and rhymes.
No one can do it better.
George Groves had the Commonwealth title at the time, 12-0 when he took on James DeGale, 11-0. 2011, Frank Warren promoted card. It was around 2008 when James DeGale picked up that gold medal in Beijing. So 3 years later, he's taken on his domestic rival who we fought in the amateurs too. And it's something that the UK has always did. No, we're not going to wait for the perfect world title opportunity. Let's put them in now. And there's no reason, if they're both as good as they say, regardless of who wins, they could both fight for world titles and win world titles. And that's what happened in this case. George Groves took a majority decision, a razor-thin decision against James DeGale. And then you can go back to Felix Cash, MATCHROOM promoted, going over to Queensbury to take on Denzel Bentley for the British and Commonwealth titles. They were both undefeated. Felix Cash won the fight decisively, stopping Bentley in the 3rd round. 2022. Felix's career after that memorable win has been very anticlimactic, whereas Bentley, he's rebounded since with 4 wins, fought ZANIBEK, did way better than expected, even losing one in between to Nathan Heaney, culminating in Denzel winning the British title for the 3rd time against Brad Paul, and now he's in line to fight ZANIBEK for the unified titles. And I can make many more examples of this happening in the UK. This method of promotion is not very popular in America, as Eddie Hearn will attest to.
Going, oh, Eddie Hearn gets a prospect beat. You don't want to watch competitive fights if you don't want to see prospects tested just a little bit when they're 8-1 on. Fuck off and don't watch my shows, because I'm going to give you real fights and I'm going to give you entertainment. And guess what? Sometimes when people underperform or they're not good enough, they're going to lose. Not every prospect is going to go on and be a world champion. But if you spoon feed them and never put them in anything competitive, one, it's a shit product. Two, it's a con for the fans. And three, you're not doing the right job for the fighter, because when they get to the top, they're not going to be good enough.
Eddie responding to America's Julian Williams, J-Rock, former light middleweight world champion. And I have to agree with Eddie Hearn, because when he breaks down that Mark Castro was 8-1 and Jaleel Hackett was similar odds to win their fights on Saturday, well, that would obviously mean the promoter expects them to win. Tough fights, but they weren't overmatched. Unless the likes of Julian Williams or anyone else critiquing the matchmaking have receipts pre-fight that Eddie Hearn, in their opinion, was overmatching them, they should shut their mouths. Nonsense. They were upsets. It was against the odds. And they came up short. But yeah, the likes of Jaleel is in way tougher than when he was fighting on the PBC. Way tougher. He fought Dobson before this, who took him the distance. And Dobson took Conor Benn the distance to fight before. Right? People coming out, oh, Conor can't punch after he popped and can't use the eggs. For one, he was fighting a guy who was unbeaten, a lot heavier, a lot bigger than him. Next thing, Jaleel Hackett struggles with Dobson worse than Conor Benn did. Hackett, who was supposed to be this talent from out the Mayweather gym, he had options of promotional outlets he could assign to. And it shows you how weak they were putting him in at TNT and at the PBC. And you have to ask yourself, why do America have this fascination about a boxer losing and it's this big disaster? Well, that's not necessarily the case. Because Oscar says the same thing about Eddie Hearn. You don't have to build a career. Well, couldn't someone point to Oscar and said, you allowed Ryan Garcia to fight Tank Davis, who one could argue is more talented than Ryan Garcia, and you allowed Tank to enforce a rehydration clause on the fight. On top of that, did you sell him out and ruin his career? Because next time, he had to take PEDs to compete. And his win against Haney got turned into a no contest, and he's looked like a laughingstock since. And before Ryan fought Tank, Oscar was demanding that Ryan took a tune-up, and Ryan wouldn't take the tune-up. Tank had a tune-up fight. So Oscar understands that if you don't prepare meticulously as a prospect, you will get beaten. But rather than Oscar take a pragmatic approach to how he represents himself online, he acts like a jackass with his clapback nonsense. And Eddie let Castro know, if you don't perform no better, you will not win a world title. He told Jaleel Hackett, if you don't prepare yourself making the weight better, you will not reach the levels you're supposed to reach, world titles, etc. You're not going to get there. Eddie Hearn's rant was an eye-opener because he let us know, and I didn't know this, that as an amateur, Mark Castro beat Keyshawn Davis and Ray Ford. He had a record of 177 wins, 7 losses, and won numerous national titles. And wasn't supposed to lose to Quintana, who came in the ring 21-2-1 from Argentina, and at short notice had this long plane journey to Puerto Rico, which is not ideal preparation. Had Castro hurt and won a split decision. It's not the end of the world, but it's when people are talking about, oh, you're getting your prospects beaten. Beaten against opponents they're supposed to beat. Like, Jaleel Hackett came from the Mayweather gym, yeah? Obviously, the TNT fighter roster is getting dismantled. There's no dates for a lot of the PBC fighters. I haven't seen the whole of the Jaleel Hackett fight, but apparently it was pretty close. Some people say Jaleel was robbed, but at the same time, he was supposed to beat this guy with something to spare. This Jose Ramon Vasquez. It was a tough fight to throw him in, to be honest, because Vasquez is Puerto Rican. The card took place in Puerto Rico. But there's nothing spectacular on Vasquez's record that would suggest he was going to beat Jaleel Hackett. And Hackett and Kenny Ellis, who's a respected name out there coaching him, they should have done way better in his weight maintenance for this fight. Hearn said it's not the end of the world taking a loss, but yo, they've got to learn their lessons. Weight maintenance, fight preparation, and you got to live up to your reputation. Let's not forget, Jaleel Hackett asks to be signed by MATCHROOM. And what happens is these days, right, these promotional outlets have become brands that they didn't used to be, right? What network they fight on is like purchasing designer clothes and showing off to everybody. Look, hey, I'm a MATCHROOM fighter, I'm a top ranked fighter, I'm a Queensbury, I'm a PBC fighter. And a lot of fighters think they've made it when they've signed a contract with Bob Arum, with Eddie Hearn, with Frank Warren, with Al Heyman. They think they've made it. and the work has just begun, in all truth. They think opponents are just going to fall down because you're signed to MATCHROOM. Another American prospect who MATCHROOM signed up, Khalil Cole. He got stopped in 9 on the undercard of Boots versus Khoshagan in Philly. And he didn't look mentally or physically prepared for the fight either. When these prospects signed with MATCHROOM are getting matched up, their opponents, they want to get to the bag as well. This is the golden opportunity, and they probably hungrier because they don't have the luxury to be a full-time boxer training, and that's all you've got to do. They likely have other jobs and do boxing as a sideline. And they're looking at these guys as food. What, I'm fighting a MATCHROOM fighter? Okay. And I don't know if Eddie has an obsession with the American market, but it's not the same American market as yesteryear. It really isn't. And I think that phase for Eddie Hearn where I need to sign American fighters, it's not dead. They still have a lot of talent out there, but there's talent all around the globe right now, right? There's a lot of territories as well who are waiting to explode with good potential fan bases. But they want to see well-matched prospects and contenders. And that's what you got on Saturday. Like, I haven't seen the whole of the Jaleel Hackett fight, but the Castro joint was a good fight. You know? I mean, like, Julian Williams' comment, I like Julian Williams, it's a silly comment. I mean, he's acting like Castro and Hackett got blown out the water. They both lost by split decisions, which would tell you these were fights they were capable of winning. But, you know, America has some awful takes on boxing, man. If you're offended, fuck it. Who cares? I don't know if they're scared to lose, if it's the Mayweather effect, as some people call it. Some people actually blaming Mayweather that a lot of these American talents are not performing at the level they're hyped up to be. But Floyd retired from pro boxing 9 years ago. Surely the boxers and coaches now have to take accountability for whatever they're producing. And Eddie rightly pointed to the main event, where Richardson Hitchens, who came under fire for his last performance against Lemos and made the excuse, I guess, that the rehydration clause really affected him, he couldn't eat. Well, this time, title shot against Peurto. Obviously, they learnt from their mistakes, they did the weight correctly, and left Puerto Rico with that IBF strap. Career best performance. And MATCHROOM picked him up from where? The Mayweather gym, when the PBC was struggling to get their fighters dates. But what it is shit got real for Richardson. He's 27 now. No longer a prospect now. You're a world title contender. You got to get this right. There will be no excuses about weight. There will be no excuses about anything.
But then it's do or die.
It's do or die. And he did what he's supposed to do. Live up to your reputation.
Boxing.
Beats and rhymes.
No one
Can do it better.
I like this WBC tournament with Turkey. The WBC Grand Prix of boxing will consist of 128 prospects across featherweight, super lightweight, middleweight and heavyweight, with an age limit of 26 being set, with fighters only being allowed to enter if they've had 10 or less professional fights. The tournament will start in February. And this will address the critiques of Eddie Hearn saying, oh, you're putting your prospects in too tough. The facts are, professional boxing has been getting away with the top amateurs signing to big promotional outlets in the pros, and then they end up fighting weaker opposition in the pros than they were previously an amateur.
And it doesn't make sense.
But now, with a tournament like that, whoever enters the tournament will be fighting rival prospects within a similar age limit and with a similar amount of pro fights. How can you be mad at that? The top prospects from all regions of the world will be contesting in the Grand Prix. And it won't be just the winners who make a name for themselves. If you get to the semis, you get to the quarters, or you perform really well and perhaps lose a close decision, or you was an outsider who overachieved in the tournaments, you can make a name for yourself and move on and perhaps become a star, winning world titles, contesting world titles, etc. That's what it's all about. It will also attempt, I will say attempt, because we don't know how well this tournament is going to do. I don't know the structure. I'm waiting to find out more information like you are. It will attempt to even the playing field on promotional outlets or the networks or apps who can hype up certain fighters better than other promoters can by feeding them a whole load of stiffs and then getting them in advantageous situations for world title fights. The tournament will attempt to even the playing field up, and that's what boxing needs. It needs that. So that way, the super featherweight tournament, the prospects in there will all be fighting a similar level of competition. on their journey trying to become a world title challenger.
Boxing
Beats and rhymes.
No one.
can do it better.
If there was an opportunity to say work with DAZN, do you feel that Top Rank can get a fair shake over there since they're so heavily invested in Matchroom? Is there an ability for Top Rank to share that space with them?
Well, we'll have to see. They've asked for a meeting with us. We don't want to be exclusive to anyone. We're going to have different packages for different networks and different streaming platforms. DAZN is doing a great job in boxing, and the people who run DAZN are friends of ours. I think it's possible.
So Top Rank will close out the year with Nayar Inoue taking on Sam Goodman, the Australian, on ESPN+. They don't yet have a schedule for 2025, although the fans have been told to bookmark a particular date. Reportedly on Saturday, July the 26th, 2025, ESPN will air their final Top Rank event. This is according to Essential Sport. Top Rank was founded in the early 70s with Ali's manager Herbert Muhammad and Bob Arum, shortly after the first Ali-Frazier fight. They've had a relationship with ESPN since the 80s. They're saying here the first event was Frank Fletcher and Ben Serrano. Over the next 7 months, Top Rank will only have 10 ESPN dates, according to Slimeball, who sometimes has good information, but sometimes he's full of crap. Bob Arum obviously spoke to the lady there, and he's negotiating a rights deal with DAZN, and they're looking to diversify rather than be exclusive just to DAZN only. Seems to be a safe bet, even if it's not an exclusive deal. They will be over at DAZN in some capacity, joining Frank Warren and Queensbury, who are on their way April 2025, and Matchroom and Golden Boy, who have practically been there since the inception of DAZN. Probably safe to say if ESPN are not renewing their deal with Top Rank, then they're going to get out of the boxing business, at least temporarily, because there's no one else in America with a roster of fighters like Bob Arum that it would be worth ESPN continuing broadcasting boxing and get viewership remotely comparable to what Top Rank have been producing.
Bob Arum calls me a joke, and what was it, braggadocious? Not being funny. Done. Over. End of story. ESPN contract, gone.
So why are ESPN not renewing their deal with Top Rank? Possibly the same reasons why HBO and Showtime got out of the game. Piracy, illegal streams, boxing becoming more marginalised and a fringe sport than ever. There's no longer the Manny Pacquiaos, the Floyd Mayweathers, the Oscar De La Hoyas, etc. to command the viewership and pay-per-view figures that would make it sustainable commercially. It's no different to the UK, the situation in America really. Like, our networks, our mainstream terrestrial networks, they bailed on boxing a long time ago. But America are dealing with it, I would say, not as well as the UK. You hear a lot of media and fans, they want it to go back to the old way, you know, and they were very slow on embracing the technology, the app technology. And DAZN came in for a lot of abuse, trying to establish itself in America. And now Top Rank and Golden Boy, Salita, Lou DiBella, all have deals or co-partnerships with DAZN now. And I think there's a lot of Americans who embrace the technology. Like, the end of the TV era is not a funeral. It's a new era. Streaming is a new era. And it's going to be a little congested over there at DAZN, although they'll make it work. But I think Top Rank are doing the right thing. They're going to use the ESPN Plus app as the building block. Then they can do deals with DAZN, Riyadh, etc., etc. Possibly keep their partnership with Sky Sports, etc. But even Bob is embracing the technology at 90 plus, and Frank Warren. Boxing is in a process of restructuring itself. It's actually a blessing, in a way, that the networks have had their time. The television networks in the UK, ITV, BBC, in America, Showtime, HBO, they've had their time. Few kinks need to be worked out with this app streaming phase we're in now. But this is what it is. The restructuring of boxing. Despite what guys like, I'm not going to say his name on Twitter, say, all the boxing needs to be centered in America. No, it doesn't. Some of it needs to be centered in America. Some of it needs to be centered in the UK. Some in Riyadh, Japan. There's lots of territories out there. It's a global audience now. The likes of Richardson Hitchens won his title out in Puerto Rico with a British promoter. Terence Crawford will be back in May, probably in Riyadh. And Terence is getting paid what he's supposed to be getting paid. Because in my opinion, this is just my opinion, he's the best fighter in the sport. In my opinion, it's between Terence and Inoue. He signed his deal with Turkey, so we're likely to see him on a Riyadh card, or maybe he stays in Japan. But his fights will be promoted globally better if they are in Japan. Like, we'll know what time to get up to see it.
Beats and rhymes.
No one can do it better.